Chapter 5. Resolution and Legacy. The Weaver's Gift. 5 years later, Lyra stood at the edge of a bustling market in the city of Meridian, watching threads dance through the crowd. She'd learned not to stare, had perfected the art of seeing without seeming to see, but it still amazed her how much the world had changed. The changes were subtle at first. People in the communities she and Kale had visited began talking about connections, about patterns, about the invisible threads that bound them together. It started as metaphor, just a way of discussing relationships and consequences. But slowly, gradually, some people began to actually see. Not the way weavers saw, with perfect clarity and detail, but they'd catch glimpses. Moments when they'd look at a loved one and perceive, just for an instant, the thread connecting them. Flashes of insight when they'd understand how their actions rippled outward through the pattern. The gift was spreading.
3 more,
Kale said, appearing beside her with the easy familiarity of someone who'd spent 5 years as a traveling partner. He pointed discreetly at a young woman helping an elderly man with his bags, at a merchant choosing to forgive a customer's debt, at 2 former enemies shaking hands.
Their threads just brightened. They chose connection.
Did you help them see it?
Didn't need to. They figured it out themselves.
Kale's damaged thread, which had indeed grown around its injury, incorporating the brokenness into something uniquely beautiful, pulsed with satisfaction.
That's happening more often now. People teaching other people to see. It's becoming self-sustaining.
Lyra felt a swell of pride and relief. They'd spent 5 years traveling from village to city to remote mountain outpost, teaching anyone who would listen about the pattern. Not as mystical prophets or powerful weavers, but as simple witnesses. They'd tell their story, carefully edited to avoid the parts that sounded insane, and then they'd help people practice seeing, looking for connections, noticing patterns, choosing engagement over isolation. Some people thought they were crazy. Others thought they were running a con. But enough people listened, really listened, that the message spread. And now, 5 years later, the world was measurably different. The void was shrinking. Lyra could feel it through her connection to the pattern. The way those pockets of nothingness had been growing had reversed. Not everywhere, not completely, but enough to matter. Enough to give hope.
We have a visitor,
Kale said, his voice suddenly cautious. Lyra looked where he indicated and felt her heart jump. A figure stood at the edge of the market, neither approaching nor retreating. A woman with empty eyes and scissors hanging from her belt. Morana, the Unmaker.
Should we run?
Lyra murmured.
Too late. She's already seen us.
The shadow woman moved through the crowd like smoke, people unconsciously parting to let her pass without seeming to notice her presence. She stopped directly in front of Lyra and Kale, studying them with those terrible empty eyes.
You survived,
Morana said.
I admit, I'm surprised. Why are you here?
Lyra asked, fighting to keep her voice steady.
The 3 who sit above said you were bound from harming my village. I'm not here to harm anyone. I'm here to...
Morana paused, as if the word was unfamiliar.
apologize.
Silence. Even the threads around them seemed to hold their breath.
I was jealous.
Morana continued, her voice carrying none of its former menace, only weariness.
Jezzel of the weavers, of their gift, of their ability to create while I could only end. I thought eliminating you would prove my value, my necessity. But then you took your place in the barrier, and I saw what you sacrificed. Saw how you suffered to preserve what I tried to destroy.
We're not in the barrier anymore,
Kale pointed out.
No, but something is. Something woven from every thread that has ended willingly, every life that accepted its place in the pattern.
Morana's empty eyes filled with something that might have been tears.
You created what I never could. An ending that was also a beginning. Death that was also transformation. You proved that my role isn't to cut threads arbitrarily, but to honor the endings that come naturally.
So you're not going to try to kill us again?
Lyra asked.
I'm not. In fact, I've come to offer something. A gift, though it may not seem like one.
Morana gestured, and suddenly Lyra could see beyond the market, beyond Meridian, beyond the entire world, could see the tapestry as she'd seen it from within the barrier. And she saw what Morana saw, threads that had become so tangled, so knotted, that they choked everything around them. Lives trapped in cycles of abuse, communities paralyzed by generations of hatred, individuals so damaged that they spread their pain like disease.
These are the threads I cut.
Morana explained.
The ones that, left alone, would cause more suffering than their ending. I don't choose arbitrarily. I follow rules older than the gods themselves. Rules about when mercy requires an ending.
You want us to judge which lives deserve to end?
Kale's voice was sharp with anger.
No. I want you to understand that ending's a part of the pattern too. That sometimes the kindest thing is to let go, to allow a thread to fray, to accept that not every story gets a happy conclusion.
Morana raised her scissors.
You've taught the world to embrace connection. Now teach them to embrace endings as well. Teach them that death isn't failure, but completion.
Why should we help you?
Because if you don't, I'll return to cutting threads according to my own judgment. And I'm very old and very tired, and not nearly as precise as I used to be.
Morana smiled, a terrible expression on her gaunt face.
You've changed the world, little weavers. But change requires someone to trim the dead branches, to prune what doesn't serve the pattern's growth. That's my role. And I'd rather work with you than against you.
Lyra looked at Kale. They'd learned to communicate through glances, through the subtle body language of people who'd once shared a consciousness. She saw his uncertainty mirroring her own.
We'll think about it.
Lyra said finally.
But we won't help you kill innocents. I don't want you to. I want you to help me distinguish between innocent endings and necessary ones. To be the conscience I never developed.
Morana began to fade back into shadow.
You have my word. No thread will be cut without your approval. Consider it my penance for the harm I caused.
And then she was gone, leaving only the faint smell of winter in the air.
That was unexpected.
Kale said.
Everything about the last 5 years has been unexpected.
Lyra sat heavily on a nearby bench.
Do you think she means it?
I think she's lonely. I think she's been doing a terrible job for centuries, with no one to tell her when she's wrong. And I think she's desperate for connection, even if she doesn't know how to ask for it.
So we help her.
We help everyone. That's what we do now.
Kale sat beside her.
But carefully. Very carefully.
They sat in comfortable silence, watching the market move around them. Lyra's mother had returned to Chimera after the first year, satisfied that her daughter was safe and committed to her strange mission. Mira was 12 now, showing signs of her own gift. Nothing as strong as Lyra's, but she could sense emotional connections between people, could feel when threads tangled or smoothed. The next generation, learning to see.
I had a dream last night
Lyra said.
about the temple.
And?
The pattern spoke to me, said the void is weakening but will never completely disappear. That as long as people exist, some will choose isolation, will create little pockets of nothing within themselves. That the pattern doesn't require perfection, it requires balance. Darkness and light, connection and solitude, beginnings and endings. The goal isn't to eliminate the void, but to keep it from overwhelming everything else.
So we just keep doing what we're doing? Forever?
Not forever. just for our lifetimes.
Lyra watched a child's golden thread bounce through the market, full of innocent joy.
And then others will take over. That's how the pattern works. Each thread does its part, then ends, then adds its light to the whole. We're not responsible for fixing everything, just for tending our small piece of the tapestry.
Kale reached over and took her hand, a gesture that had become routine over 5 years, but still sent warmth through her every time.
You know what I've learned?
He said.
What? That being separate isn't the same as being alone. That we can be two distinct people and still be profoundly connected. That the boundaries between us make our choice to stay together more meaningful, not less.
Lyra squeezed his hand.
Is this your way of saying something important?
Maybe.
Kale turned to face her fully, his amber eyes reflecting the afternoon sun.
5 years ago, we were forced together by necessity. We merged because it was the only way to survive. But we're not merged anymore, Lyra. We're free. We could go our separate ways, live our own lives, find our own paths.
Her heart clenched.
Is that what you want?
Gods, no.
He laughed.
I'm saying I choose you. Not because I have to. Not because we're bound by some cosmic necessity, but because I want to. Because every day for 5 years, I've woken up and been grateful you're here. Because you see me, really see me, and you still choose to stay.
Kale.
I love you.
He said simply.
Not as a merged consciousness, not as a partner in some grand mission, but as you, Lyra, the stubborn girl from Chimera who saw a death god and decided to fight back. The woman who sacrificed everything to save people she'd never met. The teacher who spends hours with every person who asks, no matter how tired she is. I love all of that. All of you.
Lyra felt tears on her cheeks and didn't bother to wipe them away.
I love you too. I think I have since the moment you followed me up that mountain. Even though I pretended you annoyed me.
You didn't pretend very well.
No, I really was annoyed.
They both laughed.
But I was also grateful. And impressed. And maybe a little bit in love, even then.
They kissed, a simple human gesture that was somehow more intimate than sharing a consciousness. Because this was choice. This was two separate souls deciding to intertwine. Around them, their threads danced closer, not merging, but weaving together in a pattern that was uniquely theirs. 10 more years passed. Lyra and Kale married in a simple ceremony in Chimera, witnessed by Lyra's mother and Mira and half the village. They continued traveling, though less frantically now. Others had taken up the teaching, hundreds of people spreading the message of connection, showing others how to see patterns. The gift was no longer rare. Children were born with the ability to glimpse threads. Elders developed the sight through meditation and practice. Artists incorporated the patterns into their work. Musicians composed songs that helped people feel the connections between all things. The world was becoming aware of itself, and Marana kept her word. She appeared occasionally, showing Lyra and Kale threads that had become so tangled that their ending seemed inevitable. Together, they developed protocols, trying everything possible to help first, to untangle rather than cut. But sometimes, rarely, they agreed that an ending was merciful, that a thread too damaged to heal might be released with compassion rather than prolonged suffering. It was hard work, heartbreaking work, but necessary. On Lyra's 30th birthday, she woke to find Kale already awake, staring at the ceiling of their small home in a village 3 mountains away from Chimera.
I felt it last night,
He said quietly.
My thread. It's starting to fray.
Terror seized Lyra's heart.
What? No. You're young, you're healthy, you can't.
It's because it was cut once before.
Kale's voice was calm, accepting.
Master Aemon warned me this might happen. Threads that were severed and grew back don't last as long. They burn brighter, but but shorter.
How long?
Maybe a year, maybe less.
Lyra wanted to rage, to weep, to demand that the universe take her instead. But she'd spent 15 years teaching people to accept endings as part of the pattern. And now she had to prove she meant it.
Then we make it count.
She said, voice shaking but determined.
Every day, every moment.
I was hoping you'd say that.
They spent the next year traveling to all their favorite places, revisited Chimera, where Mira, now 22 and a weaver in her own right, was teaching the next generation, climbed back to the temple, where the pattern blazed with accumulated light, holding back the void with strength beyond any individual sacrifice, said goodbye to Lyra's mother, who held them both and whispered blessings in the old language, and they talked about everything, about the life they'd lived, the pattern they'd helped preserve, the love they'd found in the midst of cosmic duty, about fear and hope and the strange beauty of knowing your ending is approaching. Kale's thread frayed slowly, gently, with a kind of grace that made Lyra think he'd made peace with it. He died on the first day of spring, in their bed, with Lyra holding his hand. His last words were,
I'll see you in the pattern.
and then his thread frayed completely, dissolving into light. But it didn't disappear. Lyra, crying and holding his body, watched as that broken, beautiful brown thread transformed into a spark, just like the sparks she'd seen from the barrier. All of Kale's essence, his experiences, his love, his courage, distilled into pure light, and it drifted upward, toward the mountain, toward the temple, toward the pattern itself, joining with all the other threads that had chosen to end well, to complete their weaving, to add their light to the eternal tapestry. Lyra felt it when his spark merged with the pattern, felt a pulse of recognition, of welcome, of love that transcended individual existence. Kale was gone, but he wasn't gone. He was part of everything now, part of the foundation that held reality together. She wept for hours, maybe days. Time lost meaning in grief, but eventually she stood, drew breath, continued, because that's what threads did. They wove forward until they couldn't anymore, and then they added their light to help others weave. 40 years later, Lyra was old now, her hair silver, her body bent with age, but her thread still burned bright, silver, gold, and strong, connected to thousands of other threads across the world. Students she'd taught, lives she'd touched, patterns she'd helped heal. She'd never remarried. Some threads, once woven together, remain entwined, even in separation. She sat in the garden of the house in Chimera that had been her mother's, that was now hers, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. Mira visited often, bringing her own children, a new generation of weavers learning to see. The world had changed so much. The teaching of patterns was now common knowledge, passed from parent to child like any other basic skill. Reading, writing, and seeing, the three fundamentals of education. Wars still happened, suffering still existed, but people understood now that their choices rippled outward. That isolation bred void, while connection strengthened the pattern. It wasn't paradise. It was just better. A world learning to see itself. Lyra felt her own thread beginning to fray. She'd known it was coming, had seen it clearly for months now. Her ending was approaching, and she was ready, almost ready.
I have one question.
She said to the empty air. The pattern answered immediately, its presence warm and familiar.
Ask, daughter.
Was it worth it? All the sacrifice? All the suffering? Kale's early death? Master Amon's 50 years of isolation? My lifetime spent teaching instead of just living? Was the tapestry worth that cost?
The pattern was silent for a long moment. Then,
Look at what you've woven.
and Lyra looked, not with her physical eyes, but with the deeper sight she'd honed over 70 years. She saw the world as it might have been if she'd refused the call. The void overwhelming everything, reality unraveling, existence dissolving into nothingness. She saw billions of threads that would never have existed, and she saw the world as it was now, imperfect, still struggling, still broken in places, but aware, connected, choosing to weave together rather than apart.
Yes,
She whispered.
it was worth it.
Your thread has been beautiful.
The pattern said gently.
Will you add your light to mine?
Will I see him again? Kale?
In a way, you'll be woven together in me, as all threads are ultimately woven together. Not merged as you were in the barrier, but connected, always connected.
Lyra felt her thread fray further. It didn't hurt. It felt like letting go of a heavy burden she'd been carrying for decades.
I'm ready.
She said.
Then come home, Weaver. Come home and rest. Your work is done.
Lyra closed her eyes and felt her thread dissolve, felt herself transform from individual existence into something greater. Her body would be found by Mira tomorrow, peaceful and smiling in the garden. But her essence, her light, her love, that would join with the pattern, with Kale, with Master Aemon, with every thread that had ever ended willingly. And from within the pattern, woven into the eternal tapestry itself, Lyra, who was no longer quite Lyra but something more, felt Kale's presence.
Told you I'd see you in the pattern.
Came his voice, familiar and beloved.
You were right.
She responded, her consciousness expanding to encompass more than she'd ever imagined.
About everything.
About us?
Especially about us.
They weren't separate anymore, but they weren't merged either. They were interwoven, distinct threads that had chosen to dance together through eternity, supporting the tapestry, holding back the void, welcoming every new spark that chose to add its light to the whole. And in the world below, in the village of Chimera, a child was born with eyes that saw silver gold threads connecting all living things. The next weaver, the next thread in the pattern, the next chapter in a story that would never truly end, because endings were just transformations in disguise, because every thread that frayed added its light to something greater, because the tapestry was always dying and always being reborn, always breaking and always healing, always ending and always beginning. And that was beautiful. That was enough. That was everything. Epilogue. In the temple of eternal threads, the great loom hums with power. The center thread blazes like a star, woven from Lyra and Kale, from Master Aemon and countless others, from every soul that chose connection over isolation, from every ending accepted with grace. The void still presses against the edges of reality. It always will. But the pattern is stronger now, reinforced by generations of people learning to see, to connect, to weave together. And deep within that blazing center thread, billions of sparks dance together, individual lights that chose to become part of something greater. They are not lost. They are not erased. They are transformed, transcended, made eternal through their willing addition to the whole. Among them, a silver gold thread and a broken brown thread weave together in patterns of love and courage and endless, beautiful becoming. Always together, always separate, always enough. The tapestry continues, and somewhere in a small village at the foot of Mount Kairos, a child opens her eyes and sees threads for the first time, sees the invisible connections binding all things together, and smiles, because the gift continues. The teaching continues. The pattern continues, forever woven, forever fraying, forever beautiful in its imperfection. The end.
Reflection for the audience. What threads connect you to the people in your life? What patterns emerge from your choices? And when your own thread frays, as all threads must, what light will you add to the eternal tapestry? The gift of the weavers isn't magic. It's simply this: the choice to see, the courage to connect, the wisdom to accept that endings are transformations, not failures. You don't need supernatural powers to weave a better world. You just need to open your eyes to the patterns already there and choose, moment by moment, connection over isolation. That is the weaver's true gift, and it belongs to everyone.